Frankly, it's not something I'm thinking about. Being an independent, I am continuing to do what I have been doing, which is to speak the truth and to call it straight, whether it's Democrats or Republicans. I think that there are, obviously, I've been very clear in outlining the problems that I've seen with today's Democratic Party. If you look at today's Republican Party, especially what's playing out right now on C-SPAN,
Yeah.
I think there's probably a lot of Republicans who are asking, well, what does the Republican Party stand for?
When you're a guest on Tucker, or now you fairly often guest host, that alignment makes sense to you? Because even though if you would have said 5 years ago, well, wait a minute, here's a Democratic congresswoman from Hawaii, and here's Tucker Carlson, basically in the Trump camp, let's say, there's a reason that it makes sense now because so many people have woken up to all of these infringements on our rights. Like, is that basically the genesis of what kind of brings these orbits together?
I think that's one of them. I think that the more people see, and I think a lot of people saw it through the COVID restrictions, people who maybe weren't even involved politically or don't really pay much attention to a lot of things, or never watched Tucker's show, or maybe yours, or didn't pay attention to me or whatever. I think more and more people are like, well, hold on a second. These decisions are causing my family and my community to suffer, my small business to fail, and so on. But it doesn't really make sense. These are not science-based decisions. These aren't decisions that are actually respecting our civil liberties and freedoms. And really, it just got to the heart of the fact that we had people who got a little bit of power and decided that they weren't going to let it go and started abusing that power and making decisions that were more about themselves and their power than it was actually about helping people. And so I think there were and are a number of different contributing factors to that. You see people who are frustrated by corporate America abusing their power at the expense of working people. You see, I think you see impingement on religious freedom in this country, and also policies this administration is putting forward in different parts of the world. So I think there's a lot of different factors when people look at, well, hold on, what are the fundamental principles this country was founded upon? And are those who took an oath to support and defend the Constitution actually fulfilling that oath? And I think people are seeing more and more that we have Democrats and Republicans in power in this country who care more for themselves than they do for the people. And that's where you see a lot of folks from across the political spectrum, I think, coming together, putting aside the political labels and just saying, hey, this is not right. And this is not what this country and our principles are all about.
Is that sort of what stops you from just saying, hey, I'm a Republican at this point, because you just feel like it's just like an old game, so what's the point really? Because most of the things that you're saying, they do line up more with Republicans. I get Republicans usually fail on those things, but at least it's the stuff that they talk about, which really the Democrats just simply don't talk about anymore.
Frankly, it's not something I'm thinking about. Being an independent, I am continuing to do what I have been doing, which is to speak the truth and to call it straight, whether it's Democrats or Republicans. I think that there are, obviously, I've been very clear in outlining the problems that I've seen with today's Democratic Party. If you look at today's Republican Party, especially what's playing out right now on C-SPAN,
Yeah.
I think there's probably a lot of Republicans who are asking, well, what does the Republican Party stand for? And like you said, one example is on the issue of civil liberties. There are different factions within the Republican Party, people who might say, yes, we stand for freedom and the Constitution and civil liberties, but these are the very same people who will stand up and defend all of the egregious provisions within the Patriot Act that undermine our civil liberties. We see the pro-war machine uniparty in Washington, leaders in both political parties. I will say there is a glimmer of hope on the Republican Party side, because unlike the Democratic Party, where there apparently are no voices now saying, well, hold on, we should exercise restraint. We shouldn't be going and trying to get ourselves into new Cold Wars and nuclear arm races and nuclear war with other countries. At least on the Republican side, there's a small but growing number of elected leaders in Congress who have the courage to stand up against the military-industrial complex and the war machine in Washington, and their own leaders in their own party, saying this is not good for the American people. This is not good for our country. So, I think it's most important for us to look to holding leaders accountable from both political parties and actually try to bring about that systemic change that brings us back to the Constitution, not just in words, but in reality, and also brings us back to what I think is the most important premise that our leaders should use when making these decisions, whether on domestic or foreign policy, is what is in the best interest of the American people? What is in the best interest of ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people in this country?
Are you worried that just too many people don't believe that that could happen? So, if you were to look at the $1.7 trillion spending bill and we're going to defend the borders of Oman and Jordan, but not our own borders, that at this point there's been a certain blackpilling, at least at the federal level, where people are just like, it just does not work, period. As I say on my show all the time, I live in Florida where everything is highly functional and competent and decent. So I have a very weird disconnect between my day-to-day life and sometimes the things that I'm talking about on the show, because here it's freaking working. Maybe we can export some of that, but I think a lot of people feel they look at a bill like that, they look at the amount of people. Well, I guess I'll ask it to you this way. Would you have voted for that freaking thing?
I would not. No, I would not have voted for it. There is no question in my mind for a whole host of reasons. But that bill is, I think it's right that that bill and all that it represents is something that is at the heart of this whole debate around who the next House Speaker will be. I think some of the problems are that we're seeing play out is that I don't know that again, I'm not in those rooms at all. I'm not privy to private conversations at all that are going on there. But what is being reported, it doesn't seem like the peripheral changes that they're talking about in those negotiations are getting to kind of what the heart of the problem is. And so, we'll see how that all shakes out. But I think that some of the issues raised by people like Congressman Chip Roy are important. And those are not necessarily issues that are owned by quote unquote conservatives or Republicans. I think there's a lot of people in the country who just look at this from a common sense perspective and say, well, no, it doesn't make sense for, Congress to pass this $1.7 trillion bill that very few, most, I would say, didn't take the time to read and look at and actually analyze.
I'm pretty sure we can say zero. You've signed a couple of these type of things, right? Like nobody read this thing, right?
Well, plus you get what, barely 72 hours, like not even working hours, like 72, I guess, clock hours.
Right.
Before you actually have to vote on this thing. And oh, by the way, there's no open amendment. So you can't, as a member of Congress, I would not have been able to go in there and say, I have problems with these and these and these provisions, and then offer an amendment on the House floor. They stopped allowing that a long time ago. There's no actual open opportunity to debate what is in the bill. So it just goes to just how broken the process is. I think you started the question by asking, is it too far gone, basically, right? Can it be fixed? I think as messy as it is, what we're seeing play out now with this House Speaker question is the kind of thing that needs to happen in order to start bringing about the changes that actually fix what's wrong.
Yeah, and just for the record, we're taping this on Friday afternoon. I think they're in their 12th round right now, and a few people did switch to McCarthy, but we're posting this on Monday, so Lord only knows what'll happen. If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of mindless drivel, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.